The power of Christ compels you.
Are you not entertained? Are you not entertained?
Possibly one of the most prolific horror movies ever made. Terrified an entire generation. The Exorcist will go down in cinema history as one of the best horror films ever put on a screen. Now, Exorcist Believer 2023, directed by David Gordon Green, is the requel to that original classic. What's up, ladies and gentlemen? I am Maximus Cardillo. It's been a minute since we've done a review on the channel, but we're back to review Exorcist Believer. I just got out of the theater. I just watched The Creator and Exorcist back to back. I did a double feature today at my theater. So we're gonna start this review off with non-spoilers. So everybody who didn't see Believer yet, you can stick around and hear my non-spoiler thoughts on the movie. First review back and my battery already died to my camera. Okay, we're back. So the movie centers around Victor and Angela Fielding. The story picks up 10 years after the death of Angela's mother. Now, the mother's death weighs on Angela, and she seeks out her mother through some spiritual ritual, I guess you could call it. I don't know. Angela and her friend Catherine, who are the two girls who wind up getting possessed, go out into the woods and they try and talk to the dead. They try and reach out to Angela's mother, and they come back possessed. And then, well, the possession shit and freaky deaky shenanigans kick off. Lights flicker, the girl appears, disappears. The girls have these cuts on their body, you know, typical stuff that you would expect in an exorcism movie. The freaky deaky stuff continues, and eventually Victor Fielding seeks out the help of, you guessed it, Chris McNeil. Yes, Reagan's mother, and she is the nostalgia character who is brought back for this requel. If we're sticking to requel rules, there is always a legacy character that has to return for some reason or another to continue the new plot with the new cast of characters. Chris McNeil is that legacy character. Her insertion to the plot is sudden and it feels forced. Now, I see that a lot in a lot of the reviews that I've read so far, and I 100,000% agree. She probably wasn't written into the first draft of the script because they didn't think that they could get her, and then once they got her, they just were like, okay, here's the second revised version of the script, now we can use her. But she's not a necessity to the plot. Everything that happened in this plot could have happened without Chris McNeil. Okay, we're in the third act. This is still the non-spoiler section, so don't worry about being spoiled. The exorcism and the way that it's handled is very different, let's say that. From all the exorcism movies that I've ever seen that deal with demonic possession, I've never seen this sort of approach. It is kind of refreshing and it's kind of obscure. Let's just say this, it isn't very well executed. On idea, premise, and base, it is a great idea, I think, personally. But the execution hinders the idea. Make of that what you will. Exorcist Believer, in my book, out of 10, is about a 4.5. Maybe a 5. It's just average. Maybe a little bit below average. It is not Maximus Tomatoes approved. I don't recommend Exorcist Believer. Guys, have you seen Exorcist Believer or not? Let me know in the comments down below. That's gonna do it for the non-spoiler section of the video. Now we're gonna move on to spoilers. You've been warned. So, as I've said, Exorcist Believer is a bit lackluster. It doesn't quite knock it out of the park. It doesn't quite live up to the original Exorcist. But did any of us actually think it was going to be as good as the original Exorcist? That is a tall order to live up to. But where Exorcist Believer sets itself apart is where it dives deep into the relationship with Victor and his wife, Angela. The movie kicks off in Haiti, and Victor and his wife are traveling, and then an earthquake happens, and Angela is critically injured. And Victor has the choice: save his wife or save his baby. Throughout the movie, that choice is kept a secret to the audience. Now, it's not until the end of the movie that you realize that Victor actually chose his wife, and Angela was the one who was saved. When that plot twist came about, I was applauding this movie. I was like, okay, this movie, it actually is doing something here. It's setting itself apart. But every time it set itself apart, it did two things to mirror the original Exorcist. From the dogs fighting in the beginning of the movie to the main protagonist in the gym boxing. Things like that, just mirroring the original. It seemed a little bit forced, it seemed a little bit out of place, but that's what these requel movies do. They try and cash in on the original nostalgia, the beats of the original. It seems very forced in Believer. Speaking of forced, I said that Chris McNeil's entrance into this movie and inclusion into this movie was very forced. I stick by that. If you've seen the movie, and that is why you're watching the spoiler section of my video, you will know that she kind of just shows up. The next door neighbor lady, who also works in the hospital, gives Victor her novel, and Victor then seeks her out, just so happens to find out where she lives, and she just so happens to allow him in her home, and she's just involved in the plot just like that. I mean, it's not even a question, an if, and, or but. She's just kind of there in the thick of things, out of nowhere. I thought it was pretty cool how Chris McNeil's character, it is said that she has studied many religions after Reagan's exorcism. And she studied the forces of evil, and she learned about all sorts of demonic possessions in different religions. It kind of tees up what the next two movies in this trilogy could very well be, and it kind of gets you excited, kind of. I say kind of, because then what they did to her character, once she shows up at the home